Hello again, Code Monkeys. Today we are going to redo yesterday's video because I don't think I did a very good job on it. So I prepared a little more today with a handy dandy list of the topics I actually want to cover. And that said, let's jump right into it. Basic Linux navigation and CLI usage. The first command I want to show you is this handy dandy ls command. It lists all of the contents of the current folder you're in. Uh, Amendment. It lists almost all of the contents of the current folder you're in. Hidden files in Linux will start with a period, and ls, as it stands, will not show you those. To get those, you need to use ls-a. You'll notice we have two dotted file names, two hidden file names over there. They are dot and dot dot. Those are actually special folders. Dot means current folder, and dot dot means next folder up. We can roll right into our next command with this, cd. If I do a cd dot dot, I will go one level up. And if I do a cd tac, I'll go back to my previous folder. That would be our work/code folder. I can use the actual names of folders too. Head on over to the root of the file system with that, and I can run an ls in there. I can run an ls-a. I can do some more interesting things with ls now that we're in a folder with more interesting things in it. ls-l gives us this handy readout. You'll notice we've got the permissions of any particular, what we call them, member of the folder, content, file. This would be the owner. It's owned by root. This is the group. The group is also root. Whoa. This number here is going to be the size, and I believe this is the last modified date. And we can just go ahead and... sorry. Let's continue our exploration of ls. We got ls-h. I'm sorry. We need an lh. Will give us a human readable size name, so 4 kilobytes here. Not sure what unit it was in before. If it was kilobytes, this is probably bytes then, but it might be something crazy like sectors. Don't worry about it. If you want the sizes to display right when you use your ls-l, just make sure you always tag an h on it, and you'll get something that makes sense. Back to our work folder. We can use the tac, or we can use work code, I believe it was. Yeah. Another ls. I like having a list of files in our folder every time I jump somewhere. Next on our list, now that we've covered ls and cd, is touch. Touch will update the last updated date of a file, but it's mostly used to create a file. So we can actually create a hidden file with that fairly easily. Probably shouldn't call it that. Let's just call it file. And if we do an ls, you'll notice we can't see it, but if we do an ls-alh, whoa, combining, and we scroll up to the right place in the alphabetical sorting, keep in mind not all implementations of ls sort the same way. You can see our file ls. It was created 2101. Oh boy, I wonder what the time is set to on this box. Anywho, not worrying about that too much. It created with a fairly default slew of permissions, and because we are root on this box, the owner and the group are both root. Can't remember off the top of my head what this 1 represents. Something important probably. And next to the permissions, as long as we're here and looking at it, this D means directory. Fancy word for a folder for anybody who's not familiar. Moving right along, we can get rid of our new file with the rm command. We called it .file, right? I have the memory of a goldfish. Fortunately, the information's an ls away. Rm will remove files, usually, but if you use rm-r, it'll actually recursively delete directories. And I can go ahead and show that to you with our next command, mkdir folder. And I believe we don't have to be in the folder to use touch. .file, cd folder, ls, nothing for the usual one, ls-a, and we get our .file. Now, next command is going to be the opposite of mkdir, rmdir. And we'll just go ahead and try it on folder. Nothing happens. How do I want to jump to this next? I think, does rmdir have a help option? Yes! Okay. Not everything, but most things will have a tac-tac help and a tac-tac, sorry, just two, version. These are specified by the POSIX standard, which does not actually mean that everything has them, but it does mean that most things will have them. Let's see if we can get one for rmdir version. Oh, look at that. Doesn't actually have a rmdir unrecognized option. So it looks like it just spits out the it looks like it just spits out the help text if you give it something it doesn't need. We're using Alpine right now, so a lot of these little utilities are implemented a little strangely through an executable called BusyBox, which is completely and totally beyond the scope of this video, but it's an interesting topic, and I think I'll get to it later. That said, we cannot remove folder because it is not empty. So we have two options. One is we can go into folder and we can delete everything in it, which will work. It's not file again, right? Yeah. And then we should be able to rmdir folder. Look right at that. Very nice, very nice. Brief aside, I wonder if we can... Okay, BusyBox won't let us do that. BusyBox is really cool, but looks like it is not upholding that their POSIX standard, at least not on the version. Ah, okay. So it does have help implemented. And we did remember to delete our folder. The other thing we can do to remove a folder... How are we doing on time here before I get too sucked into the weeds? Looks like we are at 8 minutes. Okay, cruising right along. The other way we can remove a folder is, let's make a folder again, and let's create a file in it. Is we can use the rm-r folder. Should do the trick. And that just went. Wow. Usually you have to do RF, but I guess in this implementation it'll just go. So the takeaway from this is be very careful with that rm-r, because you will notice it didn't ask me for each thing I wanted to delete. It just went. Those files are gone. If they contain something you needed, too bad. You don't get them back. Moving along, we've seen mkdir, rmdir, cat. Now we're getting into the interesting stuff. This isn't just basic navigation anymore. Cat will take a file and it will dump its contents onto the command line. This isn't very useful normally because you don't necessarily want to be looking at files with cat. There are better options. But you can use it in conjunction with other things that'll come up later to do very interesting things. For now, let's go ahead and just see it. 4.c is the one we'll be using. Go ahead, look at that. If you were here for my video on loops, you should recognize this, but it's just a little for loop program. Very fun, very happy. Our next command we're going to look at is echo. Echo is another one that doesn't seem very useful at first. It takes some kind of input in the form of, let's see here, it'll either read its arguments or it'll read from standard input and it'll dump it to standard output. Hello world seems fairly obvious, and look at that, it puts hello world back into standard output. I think if we just do echo, it'll just... Nope, just doesn't do anything. Okay, I could have sworn there was an implementation of echo where if you don't give it an argument, it'll read from standard input, but that does not appear to be the case here. It will read from standard input in other cases. That said, I haven't tested this myself extensively, but I have been warned by the internet that there isn't really an overarching standard on Echo. Every implementation is different, so make sure you test with it before you start using it. That said, we are going to use Echo to show off a couple of other fun features of the Linux command line, and that is standard input and standard output redirection. I think we can use Echo to emulate the functioning of cat by redirecting standard input, so this would be the case where it would read standard input. 4.c is what we're playing with. That should work. Oh my! That did not. Okay. Well, we'll have to use something else to show off the standard input redirection. But Echo will work just fine to show off the standard output redirection. We can use it to sort of shortchange touch a little bit. We can create a file with something in it, which is pretty cool. We do need the rightward facing caret. And if we run an ls, you'll see we have... I forgot to clean up from yesterday, but you'll see we do have a file called hello in all caps. You'll notice that it's been alphabetically sorted to the top because capital letters, believe it or not, alphabetically precede lowercase letters. Crazy world that we live in over here in, this is Alpine we're running if I haven't mentioned that, Alpine Linux land. So let's go ahead and get rid of lowercase hello. And we can use cat to verify that what we thought we put into capital hello made it there. And there it is. There's another form of standard output redirection that uses two rightward facing carets. Hello again. The difference between this and the other version... Got that syntax totally wrong. Good thing I didn't hit enter. That would have been strange indeed. And if we cat our capital hello, you can see that when we use the two side carets, that appends. If we use the single side caret, it will kablam our file and just stuff whatever we have in there in its stead. Go ahead and run cat again. Look at that. The other thing, the other main way that we redirect standard input and output is with this pipe symbol. And I think, what can we do to show that off? grep is the obvious use case of that. So we can cat a file, like, say, 4.c, and we can pipe it over to grep. We'll cover grep next. This is just to show off the pipe at this point. You use grep to look for every line in that file with the word for in it, and look, it found 2. Now, in order to make that make more sense, let's roll right along into grep. Grep is the GNU regular expression parser. So that first argument that it takes is going to be a regular expression, in this case, 4. The easiest way to use this is to just type in something you're searching for. It is significantly more powerful than that, but we could have a whole video about grep on its own, which is another thing I should do in the future. Speaking of which, how are we doing on time here? Looks like we're at about 15 minutes, so let's start looking for a nice wrap-up point. I'd love to show you all date and find too, but let's see where we're at when we get rid of grep. And our second argument to grep, moving back to grep, is going to be the file that you would like to work with. And as you can see, that has the same functionality. You can use that pipe for a lot of other things. You can sort of use it as a cheap... There's a command that finds files and folders, but you can use grep as a sort of cheap version of that by piping the output of ls over to grep. And we'll look for the same thing. We'll look for a regular expression that matches 4. And you can see we have 2 files in here named 4. Went ahead and pulled out 4.c and 4.o for us. Very handy, very handy. Do I want to show you all anything else with grep at the moment? I think we're going to leave it there, and we're just going to look at date. Date can do a lot of different things, but the obvious implementation or use case for this is it just gives you the date. It's got a lot of options there where you can format the date in all sorts of different things. I believe you can give it an arbitrary date and have it reformat it. You can have it go ahead and create outputs in any number of crazy different formats. Very useful, handy little utility. Let's see what it is in UTC time. Is that what it gave us by default? Sure looks like it. Okay. I wonder if that's accurate. We're not going to worry about that now. Check our time here. Oh, I got a timer laying around somewhere. Looks like we're at about 17 minutes. Okay. Find. Find is another very powerful tool. It'll find files that match a certain description. We're not going to go through all of find here at the moment, but let me see if I've got this right. I believe the way we want to work this is we're going to give a folder to look in, so how about /wrk, and then you've got a bunch of different options which actually do not match the POSIX standard if I remember correctly. So a single tac and then the word name. I don't believe you need the equal sign. You just go ahead and give it a name, 4.c, and it should find that for us. And it found it for us in our current folder. Not a very impressive example, but enough to let you see how it works, I think. Let's try something a little bit more interesting, as long as we're not over time. Let's find home. Well, let's find home in slash. Oh my. And it found it at /home. Very simple, very simple. This has a bunch of other options, which you can always reference with help or the man pages. We're not going to talk about man pages now. That should be a subject of another video. You can Google it if you're interested. Man pages are very handy. So name, you get a regular expression pattern, which regular expressions could also be a video unto itself, but for now, any literal string will be a valid regular expression, and it will just be that string, and you don't get into all the craziness of regular expressions that way. Very simple use case. Still very handy, even without all the added power. Let's see here, we got an iname, we got a path, file is executable, so you can look for executable files. All kinds of craziness. Where are we doing on time now? We're just about at 20 minutes. So I think we're going to call it there. Those are some of the more common Linux utilities you can use. I can actually pull up my handy dandy notes and tell you what we went over because I stuck to it pretty well this time. LS, CD, Touch, RM, MKDir, RMDir, CAT, Echo, and grep, date, and find, as well as the input and output redirection. I guess we didn't really cover input redirection, but we're at time, and that will be a subject for another video or personal research. I hope you all learned something today, and I hope you continue to have a great day. Bye!